My grandmother snatched the container of baby formula straight out of my hands, her diamond ring scratching my wrist as she glared at the government food voucher sitting on the counter. "What is the meaning of this, Lily?" she hissed, her voice echoing across the quiet base commissary. "Are you trying to humiliate our family? I ask you, wasn't $200,000 a month enough for you?" I froze, the blood entirely rushing out of my face as the cashier stared at us in absolute shock. I looked at my wealthy, elegant grandmother, then down at my 4-month-old daughter strapped securely to my chest, and felt a cold wave of horror sink deep into my stomach. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice trembling so hard I could barely breathe. "What on earth are you talking about? I've been living on my specialist salary. I have never received a single cent from you." That was the exact moment everything changed. Everyone in the grocery aisle turned to look at us. I stood frozen in my digital camouflage uniform, my 4-month-old daughter Mia fast asleep against my chest. In my hand, crumpled and shaking, was a government assistance voucher meant to cover the cost of 3 cans of basic baby formula. I am Lily. I am 28 years old, a specialist in the United States Army, and up until 30 seconds ago, I thought my family wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. When I chose a life of military service over joining the multi-million-dollar family real estate business, my parents cut me off completely. Or at least, that is what I had been led to believe for the last 2 long years. "Grandma," I whispered again, my voice completely cracking as the cashier stared awkwardly at the register screen. "I don't know what you're talking about. I survive on my base pay. I have never seen a dime from you or anyone else in this family." Eleanor's furious expression faltered. The sharp, commanding look she had worn her entire life suddenly deteriorated into pure confusion, and then into absolute sheer horror. She looked down at the government voucher in my trembling hand, then at my worn military boots, realizing with a terrible, undeniable certainty that I wasn't lying. The matriarch of one of the wealthiest estates in the entire state turned completely pale right there in the middle of a military grocery aisle. Before I reveal the dark truth my grandmother uncovered behind this multi-million-dollar mystery, make sure to follow my story to the end and comment the city or military base you're watching from, so I can see how far my voice has reached. To understand how my grandmother and I ended up staring at each other in total shock inside a military commissary, you have to understand the path I chose. Growing up, my parents made it crystal clear what was expected of me. They wanted a perfect, high-society daughter who would marry into another wealthy dynasty and help manage our massive family real estate portfolio. But I wanted something completely different. I wanted to earn my own way in life and serve a purpose far bigger than country club luncheons, designer dresses, and trust funds. When I turned 26, I did the unthinkable in my parents' eyes. I walked into a recruiting office and enlisted in the United States Army. My parents, Richard and Evelyn, were absolutely furious. They accused me of ruining the family name and essentially disowned me on the spot. For 2 years, the silence from them had been deafening. I adjusted to a completely different lifestyle, living in modest base housing, doing 24-hour guard duties, and carefully counting every single dollar from my military paycheck. Things became infinitely more complicated when I had my daughter, Mia. Raising a newborn alone on a lower enlisted soldier's pay is a grueling, exhausting reality. Between rent, basic utilities, diapers, and rising living costs, my paycheck vanished the exact moment it hit my bank account every month. When the price of baby formula skyrocketed, I swallowed every ounce of my pride and applied for government assistance benefits. I didn't care about my family's elite reputation anymore. I only cared about keeping my baby fed. I truly thought I was entirely on my own, completely cut off from the millions of dollars my family controlled. I had no idea that a massive, calculated lie was being spun behind my back the entire time. Eleanor didn't care about the whispers in the commissary. She grabbed my arm, her hand trembling with a mix of shock and rage, and practically forced me out to her waiting luxury sedan. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in a quiet, high-backed booth at a small diner just outside the base gates. Mia was sleeping peacefully in her car seat beside me, entirely unaware of the massive storm gathering around us. Eleanor sat across from me, her perfect posture rigid with an anger I had never seen in her 80 years of life. "Lily, look at me," she commanded, her eyes piercing straight through mine. "I need you to tell me the absolute truth. Have you really been living like this? Struggling to buy basic groceries? Relying on government vouchers to feed my great-granddaughter?" "Yes, Grandma," I said, a deep flush of shame heating my cheeks. "My specialist pay is barely enough to cover basic necessities. You all cut me off when I joined the military, remember?" Eleanor let out a sharp, ragged breath. "We didn't cut you off, Lily. I would never ever let my granddaughter starve, no matter how foolish I thought your career choices were." She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out her phone, logging into a secure, high-wealth private banking portal. She spun the screen around to face me. "Look at this," she whispered. My eyes scanned the screen. It was the master registry for a family trust fund established under my legal name. My heart nearly stopped. Every single month for the past 24 months, an automatic electronic wire transfer of exactly $200,000 had been authorized and cleared. "I set this trust up the exact day you finished basic training," Eleanor whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "Your parents told me they were managing the funds on your behalf to keep your military career undisturbed. They told me you were living comfortably as an independently wealthy woman who just happened to wear a uniform. Lily, where has all this money been going?" The silence between us grew heavy, punctuated only by the soft clinking of silverware from the diner's kitchen. I stared at the bright numbers on the screen, my mind spinning as I tried to reconcile the reality of my personal checking account, which currently held exactly $43, with the millions of dollars that had supposedly been transferred in my name. "I have never seen this account in my entire life," I whispered, the harsh reality settling over me like a suffocating blanket. "I don't have a debit card for this. I have never signed a single transfer authorization. Grandma, if this money was leaving your estate every single month, who was actually receiving it?" Eleanor didn't answer right away. She tapped the screen, opening the detailed transaction routing history of the trust. As the records loaded, the dark, disgusting truth was laid bare in black and white. The monthly $200,000 wasn't going to a military credit union. It was being routed directly into a private offshore holding account owned exclusively by my parents, Richard and Evelyn. "They told me they were protecting you," Eleanor said, her voice dropping into a terrifyingly quiet rage. "They claimed you wanted to prove you could survive on your own, but that they were holding this money in a secure account for your eventual return to the family business. They even showed me signed monthly transaction receipts, Lily, signed by your name." I felt a sickening wave of ultimate betrayal wash over me. My parents had used my military service as the perfect cover story. They had painted me to my grandmother as the proud, stubborn soldier who refused family help, all while systematically forging my signature to siphon away a massive fortune. While I was pulling night shifts, working in the rain, and calculating whether I could afford 3 cans of formula, my parents were using my trust fund to buy luxury yachts, fund lavish European vacations, and maintain their high society country club lifestyle. Eleanor's hand slammed down onto the diner table, rattling the coffee cups and causing a nearby waitress to jump. The initial shock on her face had entirely transformed into a cold, lethal fury. She didn't cry, and she didn't waste a single second. Instead, she slid her fingers across her phone screen and hit a speed dial contact marked simply as Preston. "Preston," Eleanor said, her voice turning into the terrifyingly calm register of a corporate executioner. "I am sitting with my granddaughter Lily right now. It turns out she has never received a single dollar from her trust, not 1 cent. Richard and Evelyn have been forging her signature and embezzling $200,000 a month for the last 2 years." There was a brief pause on the line as her head corporate attorney processed the news. I could hear a sharp intake of breath through the receiver. "I want a full, aggressive forensic audit started within the next 10 minutes, Eleanor commanded, ignoring the attorney's attempts to calm her down. Freeze every single asset tied to Richard and Evelyn's personal names immediately. Cut off their corporate credit lines, lock their access to all family properties, and cancel their power of attorney. I want them completely paralyzed financially before they even realize we know what they've done. She hung up without saying goodbye and looked across the table at me, her eyes burning with absolute determination. They thought they could use your military sacrifice to fund their endless greed, Lily. They thought they could leave my granddaughter and great-granddaughter in poverty while they played high society. They are about to learn exactly what happens when you steal from this family. 48 hours later, the final showdown took place inside the massive, mahogany-paneled conference room of my grandmother's legal firm. My parents, Richard and Evelyn, walked in with their usual arrogant, unbothered smiles, completely oblivious to the trap that had been set for them. They expected a routine family trust update. Their expressions instantly shattered into pieces the moment they stepped inside. Sitting at the head of the long boardroom table was me, wearing my crisp army uniform, flanked by Grandma Eleanor and 3 of the state's most ruthless corporate defense attorneys. "What is she doing here?" my mother sneered, pointing a manicured finger at me. "And why were our corporate credit cards suddenly declined this morning? Eleanor, this is highly embarrassing." Grandma didn't say a single word. She simply gave a brief nod to her lead attorney, Preston, who turned a laptop screen around to face my parents. "These are the complete results of our forensic financial audit," Preston announced, his voice clinical and icy cold. "We have documented 24 months of systematic grand larceny, wire fraud, and bank embezzlement. We have established clear digital routing trails showing how you siphoned nearly $5 million from Lily's trust directly into your personal shell companies. More importantly, we have full forensic handwriting analysis proving you repeatedly forged your daughter's signature on legal bank authorizations." My father's face drained of every drop of color, turning a sickly shade of gray as he stared at the mountain of financial evidence laid out on the table. My mother clutched her designer handbag to her chest, her breathing heavy and shallow as she realized their glamorous high society life was collapsing in a matter of seconds. "You have exactly 2 choices right now," Eleanor said, leaning forward with terrifying finality. "You can immediately sign these settlement documents, transferring your personal luxury vehicles, your private real estate, and all your corporate shares directly over to Lily to repay every single penny you stole from her. Or you can walk out of this room in handcuffs. The State Police Financial Crimes Unit is standing by downstairs right now." My parents didn't even hesitate. With trembling hands and tears of humiliation streaming down their faces, they signed every legal document presented to them, surrendering everything they owned to escape a federal prison sentence. They left that office completely ruined, humiliated, and penniless. Grandma Eleanor ensured that every single dollar of the recovered millions was transferred safely into a protected trust owned solely by Mia and me. I eventually completed my term of military service to focus on raising my daughter, but I never forgot the humiliation and struggle of standing in that commissary line. Today, I use a portion of those recovered funds to run a national foundation that provides emergency financial grants and baby supplies to young military families facing hardship across the country. What would you do if you discovered your own parents had stolen millions meant for your child? Comment your thoughts below, and thank you so much for watching my story until the very end.